Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's me again, Golden Blue Dude. And hey, if you haven't already, go ahead and hit that like and subscribe button. What I do is college football videos every single day and some college basketball videos, especially when March Madness rolls around. Don't forget to check out my Patreon page. We have a much wider selection, and we're finally adding merchandise, so you might want to go check out the Patreon page. Don't forget about our PayPal contest either. The person with the highest donation at the end of this month will win a brand new 42-inch Roku Smart TV worth $300. And today, yes, finally, a college basketball video. It's been tough to do a college basketball video because you gotta realize college basketball games are played very, very often, almost every single day, so it's kind of difficult to catch up with it. So you gotta pick a day where it's kind of slow, and Sundays are kind of that slow day. I mean, there were still some games today. Yesterday was the big day. So today we're gonna look at the big dance through the eyes of Joe Lunardi. I looked at his bracketology, wrote the information down, and we're gonna go through it real quick. First of all, let's go through the conferences that he thinks will have multiple bids and how many bids they will have and who those teams are. And keep in mind, these number of bids that he's saying each conference will have is not based on if a team that's not projected to get into the big dance wins the tournament. That could add one extra team into the tournament for that particular conference. First up, the Big Ten with the most teams to get into the tournament according to Joe Lunardi. Joe Lunardi has the Big Ten sending 9 teams to the big dance, and that includes Rutgers, and Rutgers has gotten extremely hot. If they stay hot, they could go deep in the big dance. He has them as an 11 seed right now, last 4 byes, meaning one of the last teams to not have to play in that very first play-in round. That's what the last 4 bye means. Their record is 16-9, but like I mentioned, they are red hot. Curiously, he does have Michigan in his last 4 in, so he has Michigan in, but he has them playing in one of those play-in games. That's what last 4 in means. He has them as a number 11 seed. Not sure if I agree with that. I don't think Michigan has done enough to get into the big dance. They are 14-10. Next up, the Wisconsin Badgers. He's giving them a 4 seed. They're 20-5 right now. Then Illinois, also a 4 seed. They're 19-7. After that, Iowa, a 7 seed, 18-8. Then Ohio State, a 5 seed, 16-7. Then Purdue, a 2 seed, 23-4. Then Michigan State, a 5 seed, 18-8. And then Indiana starting to sneak in there as a 10 seed, 16-9. Really, the only big thing that I disagree with in this is putting Michigan in. No. They do not deserve to be in the big dance at all right now. Next up, the Big 12 with 7 teams. He has Iowa State as a 10 seed. They are 18-9. He has Oklahoma last 4 byes, so not only are they in, but they don't have to play in a play-in game, and they're 14-13. No, I'm sorry, I do not agree with that at all. They may have some great wins, but they are only 1 game over 500. After that, Texas Tech Red Raiders, they have the 2 seed, 21-6. And he has Kansas as a 1 seed, 22-4. He has TCU as a 10 seed, 16-8. Texas as a 4 seed, 19-8. And Baylor as a 3 seed, 22-5. Really, the only thing that I disagree with is having Oklahoma in the big dance at all. What are you thinking? Next up is the Big East. He's projecting 7 teams from the Big East. The first team is Creighton as a 12 seed, last 4 in, so they are getting in, but they would have to play in a play-in game. They are 17-8. Next is Marquette, an underrated team. I think they could make a big mark in the big dance, giving them a 7 seed, 17-9. Then Providence, a very dangerous team, a 3 seed, 21-3 as of the making of this video. Seton Hall, the 8 seed, they're 16-9. Villanova, the 3 seed, 21-6. UConn, this 6 seed, UConn keeps climbing. They're 19-7. Then Xavier, a 7 seed, 17-9. Really don't disagree with much there. I think that's pretty solid. Next up, the SEC. He's projecting 6 teams in. First up, Alabama, the 5 seed, 17-10 right now. Then LSU, the 6 seed, 19-8. Kentucky, the 2 seed, 22-5. I do think the Wildcats could play themselves into a 1 seed. Then there's Auburn. They're a 1 seed, 24-3. I'm not sure if he did this before that loss to Florida yesterday, but as of right now, making out this video, he has them as a 1 seed, which I don't necessarily disagree with. Then Arkansas, the 6 seed, 21-6. And Tennessee, a 4 seed, 19-7. Next up, the ACC. He has 5 teams from the ACC getting in. First up, North Carolina, last 4 in, meaning they get in, but they have to play in a play-in game. 12 seed, 19-8. Then Miami, the Hurricanes. He has them in as a 9 seed, 19-8. Then Notre Dame, also a 9 seed, 19-8. Then Wake Forest, also a 9 seed, 21-7. And then, of course, Duke, the 2 seed, 23 and 4. Really, the only thing that I don't like is he has 3 ACC teams as a 9 seed. Come on, man. Mix that up just a little bit. Next up, the West Coast Conference. This is a strong conference this year, not just carried by Gonzaga. First up, we have San Francisco. Last 4 byes, meaning they get in and they don't have to play in a play-in game. He has them as an 11 seed. Then Gonzaga up to a 1 seed again, 23 and 2. Then St. Mary's an 8 seed, 22 and 6. I don't disagree with anything right there. Next up, the Pac-12. He has 3 teams from the Pac-12 getting in. UCLA as a 3 seed, 19 and 5. USC as a 6 seed, 22 and 4. And then Arizona as a number 1 seed, 24 and 2. The Pac-12 is very top heavy, but they do have some good teams. Next up, the Mountain West. A little bit stronger than usual this year. He has 3 teams getting in. First up, Wyoming as an 8 seed, 22 and 4. And Wyoming is ranked right now. Then there's Boise State as an 8 seed, 21 and 6. And then Colorado State as a 7 seed, 21 and 4. And finally, his last conference with multiple bids is the AAC with just 2 teams. Finally climbing in for Joe Lunardi is Memphis, the last 4 in, but they would have to play in a play-in game. He has them as an 11 seed, 15 and 8. And then there's Houston, who he has as a 5 seed, 21 and 4. I agree with this for the most part, but I think there's a few other leagues that should have multiple bids. But right now, I want to talk about the lower conference battles. The conferences that are only going to get 1 team, but have some great battles going on. First up, the A-Sun. I think this is a 4-team race. I think it's Liberty, who's 19 and 9, Jacksonville, who's 18 and 8, Florida Gulf Coast, 18 and 10, very capable of winning the A-Sun, and then Jacksonville State, who's 17 and 9. So if you like good basketball and under the radar basketball, you need to check out the A-Sun. Next up, the A-10. And honestly, this is one of those leagues that I think should have multiple bids. I do not agree that he only has 1 team from the A-10, and that's Davidson, who's 22 and 4. Check out the A-10 race. VCU, 18 and 7. St. Bonaventure, 17 and 7. St. Louis, 18 and 9. And Richmond, 17 and 10. I think at least 2 A-10 teams should get in the big dance. Next up, another conference battle to keep your eyes on. The Colonial with UNC Wilmington in the lead right now, 19 and 8. But then there's Towson, 21 and 7. Then Hofstra, 19 and 9. And Delaware, 19 and 9. That's going to be a nice battle right there. On to Conference USA. This is one of those conferences that, in my opinion, should get at least 2 teams in. You have Middle Tennessee leading the way, 19 and 7. Then North Texas, who he does have in, 20 and 4. But I think UAB deserves to be in as well. They're 20 and 7. Louisiana Tech, 19 and 7. UTEP, 16 and 10. And Western Kentucky, 17 and 11. That's going to be a great basketball battle for that conference. Next up, the MAC. Another conference that I think should have multiple teams in. I think he just has Ohio. But it's Toledo that's leading the way right now at 21 and 6. Then Ohio, 22 and 5. Then Kent State, 17 and 9. Buffalo, 16 and 8. Akron, 17 and 9. Any of those teams capable of winning the MAC. Then on to the WAC. Another one of those conferences should get multiple teams in, but according to Lunardi, not going to happen. First, there's New Mexico State, 22 and 4. And I'll tell you what, New Mexico State is a dangerous team. They have some great wins, and they're a pretty good team. They're 22 and 4 right now. Then there's Seattle, 21 and 6. And Stephen F. Austin, we already know that they can do some damage in the big dance, 18 and 8. Grand Canyon up and coming, 18 and 7. Abilene Christian, 17 and 8. And then Utah Valley, 17 and 9. That's a big conference battle for possibly just 1 spot in the big dance. I think the Sun Belt is an interesting conference as well. Could they get multiple teams into the big dance? I think it's a possibility, but right now Joe Lunardi says no. He just has Texas State from the Sun Belt getting to the big dance. Texas State is 19 and 6, but you also have Appalachian State, who's 17 and 12, Troy, who's 18 and 9, South Alabama, who's 18 and 9, and Arkansas State, who's 16 and 9. I think there's definitely a possibility that more than 1 Sun Belt team could make it to the big dance, especially if Texas State doesn't win the Sun Belt tournament. They have a decent resume. I don't think they deserve to be snubbed. Then there's Missouri Valley. Everybody thinks it's Loyola Chicago's to lose, and it possibly could be. They're 20 and 6. But don't forget about Missouri State, who's 20 and 8, and Drake, who's 19 and 9. Drake was a big story a couple of years ago. Don't forget about them Bulldogs. They're pretty good too. Then on over to the Ohio Valley. Everybody thinks that is Murray State's to win. I tend to agree with that. They are 26 and 2, and they are ranked right now, but you cannot forget about Belmont, who's 24 and 5, and Morehead State, who's 20-9. Two teams that are very capable of knocking off Murray State. Now on to my possible snubs. These are the teams that could deserve to be in the big dance that might get left out. First up, we're going to go back to the AAC. I think SMU at 18-6, some pretty good wins. Joe Lunardi has them just on the outside. I think SMU has some better resumes than some of the teams he already has in. They could be snubbed though. Cincinnati, not many people are talking about Cincinnati. I think Cincinnati is a quality team and might deserve to be in the big dance. Maybe not necessarily right now, but if they finish strong, they could have a great resume and deserve to be in but get snubbed out. Next up, Virginia, 17-10 this year. Yes, it is a letdown year, but if you look at some of the teams that he has in, Virginia has a better record, and I think they're a better team. Then there's Virginia Tech. He has Virginia Tech barely on the outside looking in. I actually think they're a notch under Virginia, but they might be right there with Virginia, barely on the outside looking in. After that, we're going to the Big South. I think either Longwood or Winthrop, whoever doesn't win the Big South, will get snubbed, and I think both of those teams are pretty good. Longwood with 21-6, who he does have in right now, and then there's Winthrop, who's 19-8. Then on over to the Ivy League, and I think if Princeton doesn't win the Ivy League tournament, they will get snubbed, even though they would deserve to be in, and they're 19-5 right now. Then on over to the MAAC. I think if Iona doesn't win the tournament, they're not in, and they would deserve to be in at 21-5. And there's San Diego State in the Mountain West. Pretty good record, 17-6. Pretty decent resume, but as of right now, they would get snubbed. Remember I talked about the Pac-12, how they're top heavy. Well, there's two teams that are under that top level that might deserve to get in, and that's Oregon, who's at 17-10. They have some pretty good wins, and Colorado, who's 18-9, solidly but kind of quietly building their resume. But both of those two teams could get snubbed. Then we go back to the SEC and Florida. Right now, he has Florida on the outside looking in at 17-10, and they just beat the number one team, Auburn. Florida could still get snubbed, but they have a pretty good resume now, especially with that win over Auburn. And then there's South Carolina. South Carolina does need to add to their resume. They're 16-10 right now. If they don't add to their resume, they probably will get snubbed. And finally, back over to the West Coast. I'm telling you, this is a very strong conference, but there's two teams that could be snubbed that I think deserve to be in. The first one's Santa Clara at 18-10. They have some great wins. I think they've done enough already to be in the big dance. Joe Lunardi does not have them in as of right now. They are 18-10, but I'm telling you, the wins that Santa Clara have are very impressive. They deserve to be in right now, but if they finish strong, they could play their way in as far as Joe Lunardi is concerned. And then there's BYU. He has BYU barely on the outside looking in. I think BYU deserves to be in, not only in, but also a last four bye. I don't think that they should have to play in a playing game. That's how good their resume is at 19-9. Y'all let me know in the comments section if you agree with me or if you agree with Joe Lunardi. I can't wait to see your comments. And of course, I'll give you my opinion about your opinion. That's all I got for you for this show. Like and subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you on my next show.